India, I shall start by telling you what an experience I had in Cambridge when I went there to study Muslim-Jewish relations. I thought there couldn't be a better library for that study than the Library of Cambridge. And when I looked for books on Muslim-Jewish relations, I was very surprised to see that there was not a single book on Muslim-Jewish relations that referred to South Asia. And this is in spite of the fact that South Asia is home to 1/3 of the world's Muslim population. So their attitudes towards Jews, Israel and Zionism certainly count. And the diaspora of South Asian Muslims is bigger than the diaspora of Muslims from any other region of the world. So wherever they go, they have this immense power to influence the attitudes of Muslims from other regions of the world too, towards Jews, Israel and Zionism. Considering this, and also considering the fact that Jews have been present in India for at least 12 centuries and possibly for more than 2 millennia if one goes by their own traditions, it becomes all the more relevant and significant to focus on South Asia, not just for the study of Muslim-Jewish relations, but also for the work aimed at the betterment of Muslim-Jewish relations, aimed at bringing about a positive change in Muslim attitudes towards Jews. But sadly, the focus until now has been very misplaced, because almost all books, why am I even using the word almost, all books on Muslim-Jewish relations are focused on West Asia, the Middle East, which is home to only 20% of the world's Muslim population, if we count only the Arab population. And when I talk of Arabs, here I'm also counting the Arab population of the North African countries. So the proportion of Arabs in the total world population of Muslims is only 20%. In this slide, the picture is of a mosque from my hometown Lucknow, which happens to be a major center of Muslim scholarship. It was home to Ayatollah Ruhollah Musawi Khomeini's grandfather for a number of decades before he returned to Iran, the person who brought about Islamic revolution in the country and changed world politics forever. It's also home to 2 big Islamic centers of learning. This is the region that we are talking about. This is the Muslim world. Although India is predominantly a Hindu country, Muslims are only 13% of its population. Yet, this 13% of the total Indian population is the 3rd largest Muslim population in the world. This is the distribution of Jews across the world. Yet another reason for giving importance to South Asia is that most of the major Islamist terrorist organizations are based in South Asia, either in Afghanistan or in Pakistan. And the seminaries that they draw their inspiration from happen to be interestingly located in the secular state of India. Deoband, the seminary in Deoband, very close to Delhi, happens to be the source of ideological inspiration to the Taliban. Islam came to India during the lifetime of Muhammad. So Jews have been neighbors to Muslims for as long as there has been Islam in this world. In the state of Kerala, which is home to the world's oldest, one of the world's oldest Jewish communities, the Kochni Jews, one of the world's oldest Muslim communities, the Mopla community, and one of the world's oldest Christian communities, the Syrian Orthodox Christians. Here in the slide we have the picture of the oldest mosque in India, which is one of the oldest in the world, and this picture is of the Pardesi synagogue in Cochin, which is the oldest synagogue in the Commonwealth countries. Muslims in India can be divided into these categories. But before I go on to elaborate upon this division of Muslims in India, I must tell you that since Jews are only 5,000 in the total Indian population of 1.4 billion people, they kind of get lost in the sea of humanity. So it is natural, it is only obvious that most of the South Asians never come into any direct contact with Jews. They know Jews only through secondary sources. And what the case is with all Indians, same is the case with the Indians who subscribe to the faith Islam. Now, since most of the Muslim population, just like in general most of the South Asians don't have any direct contact with Jews, they know them through secondary sources. So knowing them through secondary sources gives birth to a number of stereotypes and misconceptions. And hatred is something which thrives on falsehood. So I would not be wrong to say that most of the Muslims in the country have hostile feelings towards Jews. They are antagonistic towards Jews and Israel, and particularly to Zionism. But at the same time, there are many other things too, which makes India a land of paradoxes. India has produced more examples of Muslim-Jewish amity than any other country in the world. India is the only country in the world where Jews never faced any persecution and could live in peace and harmony with their non-Jewish neighbors for as long as 2 millennia. When Israel was created and Jews settled in Israel from 70 different countries, the only Jews who came to Israel without a baggage of memories of persecution were the Jews from India. And interestingly, for the first time that they ever faced any discrimination was in Israel. Not from the Ashkenazim, but interestingly from the Iraqi Jews. Not because their racial purity was doubted, only because questions were raised about the correctness of their observance of Judaism, because they seemed to be so completely immersed in Indian ethos and Indian culture. So, who are the people who are responsible for those many examples of Muslim-Jewish amity in India? They are those Muslims who are in direct contact with Jews. Then there are certain Muslim groups in India who claim descent from the lost tribes of Israel. There are some who claim descent from Jews. Here I am making a clear distinction between Israelites and Jews. Then a large chunk of the Muslim population, majority of them, are those who have anti-Semitic feelings. And there is a small section among them that is made up of liberals. The tiny minority of Indian Muslims, which does have direct interaction with Jews, being neighbors in the cities of Mumbai, Kolkata and Ahmedabad, has an exceptionally pleasant and cordial relationship with them. Personal acquaintance with Jews does not leave any room for negative stereotypes of Jews. Now, the Muslims who are in direct contact with Jews can be seen in these 5 different roles. All synagogues in India are looked after by Muslims. Almost all students in the Jewish-owned and run schools in India are Muslim. All Jewish localities in India are located in Muslim neighborhoods. Numerically, the largest of the 3 Jewish communities in India, the Bene Israel, use Islamic terms for the religious purposes. They call their prayer namaz, which is actually the Islamic prayer. And they refer to the synagogue as mosque, and the word that they use for it is masjid. There are a number of instances of Muslim-Jewish romances. I shall start with the first Indian. That is, the person who held the position of president of the world's largest democracy. The person at the bottom left corner, Dr. Zakir Hussain. He was India's third president and first Muslim to become the president of India. He had a Jewish girlfriend, and even after he got married to an Indian Muslim, he continued with his romantic relationship with the Jewish lady, and she left Germany to be close to him. And he was very instrumental in founding a prestigious university in Delhi, Jamia Millia Islamia University, which has also hosted a number of Israeli scholars. And there is a hostel in that university named after Gerda Philipsborn. Dr. Khwaja Abdul Hamid was the founder of an Indian pharmaceutical giant, Cipla. Pramila, the lady at the top left corner, was India's first beauty queen. She came from the Baghdadi Jewish community of Kolkata, and her real name was Esther Victoria Abrahams. And she was chosen Miss India in the year 1947. She got married to a Muslim actor, but she loved India more than her Muslim husband. So when her Muslim husband decided to migrate to Pakistan after India's partition with his first Muslim wife, she decided to stay back with their son. And today her son is the only surviving Jew in the world's biggest film industry, the Indian cinema. And all our earliest female actors were Jewish. Nadra, another Baghdadi Jewish actress. Alec Padamsee is a Muslim, and he played Jinnah in Richard Attenborough's film Gandhi. He was married to a prominent Indian Jewish actress from the Beni Israel community, Pearl Padamsee. Robin David is a journalist and the author of the only Jewish account of the anti-Muslim pogrom that rocked the state of Gujarat in the year 2002. So here we have a Jew bringing to sharp focus the agony of Muslims. That's his wife, Rahil Datiwala, PhD candidate at Oxford University, a sociologist. Shai Ben-Sood is the world's only Hebrew qawwal. Qawwal is a singer who sings in the traditional Islamic mystical musical tradition of qawwali, and he sings qawwalis in Hebrew and is married to a Muslim. The lady in the center is Atiya Faizi Rahman, a great female Muslim intellectual of India who got married to India's greatest Jewish painter, Faizi Rahman, who was born Samuel Rahman Samuel Talkar, but embraced Islam when he got married to her and was invited by the creator of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, to settle in Pakistan. And the only art gallery in the Muslim world named after a Jewish painter is the one named after him in the city of Karachi in Pakistan. Sadia Shepherd grew up with parents from 3 different faiths: an American white Christian father, a Pakistani Muslim mother, and an Indian Jewish grandmother. And she has written an account of this experience of hers in this book, The Girl from Foreign, and has even made a documentary on her grandmother's community, In Search of the Beni Israel, funded by a Fulbright scholarship. Soz Malyabadi is a prominent Urdu poet whose mother was Jewish, and she left her Muslim husband for another Muslim and went to Pakistan, leaving behind her 2 younger sisters, which were raised by her former Muslim husband as Jews. And here in the picture below, he can be seen with his 2 Jewish aunts, whom he met after a period of 40 years, because they moved to Israel under the youth Aliyah movement. Dr. Khurshid Imam is the first Indian to give Hebrew lessons at any Indian university. He is the only assistant professor in the Hebrew language at the Jawaharlal Nehru University. The person next to him is a chef by profession and the only Hebrew calligrapher in South Asia, a Muslim from Kerala. Dr. Khurshid Imam was instrumental in organizing the first ever conference on Hebrew language and culture at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, which was attended by scholars from 8 Israeli institutions. These are some specimens of Tawfiq Zakaria's calligraphy. He has developed a unique style that he has written Hebrew in the Arabic Kufic style. He is a close friend of the matriarch of the Kochni Jewish community, Sarah Cohen. Here he is making a kosher meal for her. There have also been a number of Sufis who were actually born Jewish. The most interesting of them was Sarmad, who was not only a Sufi but also a great scholar of Talmud and Torah, and it was in his supervision that his disciple translated the Hebrew Torah, the Tanakh, into Persian, which was later incorporated in a work of comparative religion commissioned by the Mughal prince Dara Shikoh. Some other interesting aspects of his personality were that he was also a homosexual and a nudist, and his tomb is revered today as a shrine. It stands right in front of the Jama Masjid in Delhi. And the first education minister of India, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, was his official biographer. Maryam Jamila was a Jewish convert to Islam, but sadly she went on to produce a lot of anti-Semitic literature and became a very prominent adumbrator of the ideology of the Islamist organization Jamaat-e-Islami. Muhammad Asad was born Leopold Weiss, an Austrian Jew, and he was one of the earliest representatives of Pakistan at the United Nations. And his translation of the Quran is counted among the best in the world. Here we have this lady Noor Inayat Khan, a Muslim who fought the Nazis from India. She was a British secret agent. Now the two Muslim claimants of Israeli descent are Pashtuns, the people I come from, and Kashmiris. They are considered the best contenders for the status of the lost tribes of Israel. This is their region. In India, these are the states they are scattered in. These are pictures of some direct ancestors of mine. Ever since I started researching this topic, there has been great interest shown by Jewish scholars across the world. Malihabad was even visited by 2 Israeli tour operators to see if there was a possibility of incorporating it in the Jewish tourist circuit. By the way, a group that claims descent from Jews, Bani Israel, another Muslim clan that claims descent from Jews, and they have even produced a number of Islamic theologians. You can see Magin David on a building of theirs. There are many liberal Muslims. Interestingly, 3 of the people in this slide are Pashtuns. Professor Akbar Ahmed is the person who has initiated a Muslim-Jewish dialogue with the father of the deceased American Jewish journalist Daniel Pearl. Dr. Amina Hoti is the co-founder of the Center for the Study of Muslim-Jewish Relations in Cambridge. Professor Navras Jaat Aafreedi is perhaps the only Muslim who teaches Jewish theology and is currently the director of Manhattan College's Center for Holocaust Studies. Tariq Fateh is the author of the book, The Jew is Not My Enemy. Then there's also an ideology among the Muslims that the land of Israel was promised to Jews according to the Quran. And it is the creation of the modern state of Israel is in accordance with the teachings of Islam. And these are some of the most prominent people who believe in this ideology. Tariq Khan particularly is very important because he is the editor of an online newspaper, Weekly Press Pakistan. I would request all of you to visit its website. The moment you go to its website, you will realize for yourself how friendly it is towards Israel and Jews. An expert of Indo-Israel relations, Professor Kumar Swamy, also sees a duality of public rhetoric and interest-driven action among the Muslims. There is a duality of public rhetoric and interest-driven action that symbolizes the attitude of Indian Muslims. He is a prominent Indian academic who took great pride in never visiting Israel, yet he seized upon the first opportunity he got to visit Israel. Same was the case with Najma Heptullah, a member of the Indian Parliament. Over the years, there has been a rise of anti-Semitism among South Asian Muslims, and it emanates out of overly literal interpretations of the polemics in the Quran and the Hadiths, that is, alleged sayings of Muhammad. Adopting an essentialist approach, recent writings on the Jews in the Quran attribute to them an unchanging nature which persists across the centuries. Historically conditioned polemic against the Banu Israel and Al-Yahud in the Quran forms the basis of a generally negative construction of Jewish nature in these works. These are the kind of nonsense that Maryam Jamila wrote after she embraced Islam, and on the basis of this, she emerged as a very prominent person in the Islamist organization Jamaat-e-Islami. She was born Margaret Marcus in New Jersey. The person who was the founding chairman of the trustees of the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies, this is what he wrote in a book of his. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but I'll have to move on to the next slide. Another problem in India is that of the yellow journalism of the South Asian Muslims, and it plays a very important role in shaping the perceptions of Jews, Israel and Zionism among the Muslims there. In the year 2009, I organized a Holocaust films retrospective in my hometown Lucknow in order to raise an awareness of the Holocaust, which most of the Indians know nothing about. When Indians don't even know about Jews, how can they be expected to know anything about the Shoah? A large section of the Indian population thinks of Jews as a sect of Christians. There are some who think of them as a sect of Muslims, while there are others who mix them up with Zoroastrians. So when this event took place at the two biggest universities in Lucknow, at the University of Lucknow and Ambedkar University, driven completely by philanthropy, I did not get funding from any organization, not even the Israeli embassy, which I had contacted them, but got no response. I simply begged for film DVDs, and my friends across the world were very forthcoming in sending me film DVDs, and some of the film DVDs were lent to me. Altogether, I managed to screen 46 films on the Holocaust, feature films as well as documentaries, which were seen by 4,000 people in a span of 14 days. And every two film screenings were interspersed by lectures by prominent Muslim intellectuals, particularly by prominent Muslim intellectuals, because I wanted them to speak against the Muslim tendency to deny the Holocaust. Yet, when this event was in progress, the two largest circulated Urdu language newspapers in the city carried lengthy stories denying the Holocaust. And the title of both of these stories was "The Biggest Hoax of the 20th Century, Holocaust." The other was titled "Holocaust, the Biggest Hoax of the 20th Century." A very prominent Shia Muslim cleric, Maulana Kalbe Sadiq, is a shareholder in one of these publications. Why does the Muslim press, the Urdu press in particular, Urdu is the lingua franca of all South Asian Muslims, indulge in yellow journalism? Only because being critical of Israel, being critical of Jews, immensely increases the saleability of the publications. As he said. The Jewish conspiracy theories are very common. For instance, a very common theory still prevailing among South Asian Muslims is that there is a Jewish conspiracy to bring down the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The 9/11 was done by the Jews. Even the attack in Mumbai, the terrorist attacks on Mumbai, had been done by Jews. The Jews were the people behind those attacks. A conspiracy to desecrate the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I recently published an article on my city's Jewish connections. The article was originally titled simply Lucknow's Jewish Connections. But the title was changed to the title that you see here. And the moneylender, as you can see, has particularly been placed in the red, only to strengthen a Jewish stereotype. The person responsible for doing so, and also for illustrating my article with an anti-Semitic caricature from the Nazis, the person responsible for doing so was this Shia Muslim Navras Jaat Aafreedi, who is the feature editor of the Lucknow Times. When I protested, the editor simply reprinted my article without an apology. And he did not even publish the many letters of protest that were sent by many of my friends. It becomes relevant here to point out that its editor, although Hindu, is married to a Shia Muslim, and Navras Jaat Aafreedi probably is a relative of hers. What an anthropologist friend of mine wrote about it to the editor. Protests against Israel are common. There is a Freemason temple in my hometown Lucknow. Simply because of the Freemason obsession with King Solomon, Freemasons have come to be seen among the Muslims as a secret Jewish organization. And the building that houses the Freemason temple actually belonged to the Shia Muslims before it was given by the British to the Freemasons. Now a movement has been initiated by the Shia Muslim clerics in the city to regain possession of that building. But every time an article appears in the Muslim press on this, the Freemason temple is projected as a Jewish-owned building, and Freemasons are projected as a secret Jewish organization. Here we can see pictures from my hometown, Shia Muslim clerics leading the procession. The latest example of Jewish conspiracy theory from South Asia is how a recent attack on Shias in Pakistan was projected by a Canada-based Shia Muslim organization as a Zionist conspiracy. There have also been instances of South Asian Muslim attacks on Jews. Fortunately, never by any Indian Muslim. Even if the attacks have taken place on the Indian soil, the attacks have been perpetrated by foreign Muslims. Meera Mahadevan, who was the first Jewish writer in the Hindi language, she gave an account of how the Jews were driven out of Pakistan right after Israel's creation. She writes about it in her Hindi novel Apna Ghar, published in the year 1961, which was later published in 1975 in English. So, there aren't any Jews in Pakistan left today. There used to be a community of Jews numbering around 2,000 people. Now, there aren't any. And the only synagogue that was there was desecrated by Pakistan's dictator, Zia-ul Haq, to build a shopping mall on it. But these faces for young people that you see in this slide are very brave and courageous young people. They are all Pakistanis. And we, even in these very grave conditions, we get such beacons of hope. The lady in the top left corner, is the only non-Muslim among all these faces. She's a Zoroastrian girl. Her name is Veera Rustamji. And she wrote a play on the Jewish community that once existed in the city of Karachi and how they were driven out of the city. And she formed a group. They are all students, first-year students of the Indus Valley School of Art and Architecture. And they very courageously and bravely held 2 shows of this play of theirs in that very city from where the Jews had been driven out. Their play was titled The Lost Jews of Karachi. In 1967, there was an attack on the Rangoon synagogue. Daniel Pearl was beheaded in the year 2002, mainly because he was Jewish. Because when they abducted Daniel Pearl, they were unaware of his being a Jew. All that they know was that he was an American. It was later that they came to know that he was Jewish and then realized that he was a far more prized possession than what they had thought initially. The 2000 attacks in Mumbai had the Chabad house as one of their main targets. The Holzberg couple was brutally murdered. In 2010, there was a bomb blast at the German bakery in Pune, which is very closely located to the Lal Devil synagogue there. So it's said that it was also a conspiracy to hurt the Jews. He is a very prominent leader of the Islamist organization, the Hurriyat Conference in Kashmir. And he supports the idea that the Israeli tourists be barred from entering Kashmir. And there was also an attempt to abduct Israeli tourists in the year 1993. In such very sad conditions, we see beacons of hope. For instance, when the Holzberg couple was murdered, their child, Moshe Holzberg, was saved by his Christian nanny and their Muslim cook, Qazi Zakir Hussain, in whose lap Moshe can be seen in this slide. Last year there was an attack on an Israeli diplomat's wife in Delhi, a bomb blast, which was perpetrated by Iranians with the involvement of a Shia Muslim journalist from India. Now, what is it that fuels Muslim antagonism towards Jews, which eventually influences India's policy towards Israel? India is a secular state, so officially no religion or religious community can influence its policies. Yet the fact is that Indian foreign policy has always been influenced by Muslims. The Muslim factor has always been very prominent in keeping India from having relations with Israel for the first 40 years of its existence. The Arab-Israeli conflict, the misinterpretation of the Quranic references to Jews, the yellow journalism of the Muslim press, particularly Urdu, and the English fiction. These are the characters which the Indians fail to realize are absolutely fictitious. And this is how they perceive Jews, those who know about Jews. The larger population is absolutely ignorant of Jews, but those who know, this is what they think of Jews. These are the images that shape their perceptions of Israel. Despite conflicts, India has always maintained formal ties with Pakistan and China, and even during the military conflicts did not expel the ambassadors. But India did not have any diplomatic relations with Israel for 40 years, primarily because of the Indian Muslim antagonism towards Israel. Any discussion on the Islamic inputs into India's policy towards the Middle East has become anathema and is often dismissed as an anti-Muslim conspiracy of the Hindu right wing. Numerous writings on the subject have marginalized or ignored the Islamic dimension. Indian intellectuals often refuse to admit that concern about India's Muslims affected and biased Indian policies and attitudes towards Israel. India claims to be a secular state where no religion can determine or even influence policy. Admitting that Islam and apprehension about India's Muslims have indeed massively influenced Indian policy would dent this claim. Partly due to pressures from the Muslim constituency, Nehru waited for more than 2 years to recognize Israel. but deferred establishment of diplomatic ties. Moreover, by the time Nehru recognized the Jewish state, two other Islamic countries, namely Turkey and Israel, had recognized Israel, and four others had signed armistice agreements with it. An Indian Foreign Minister, Jaswant Singh, kindly told in an Israeli audience in July 2000, domestic concerns over India's Muslim population played a significant role in the prolonged absence of diplomatic relations. Only 2,000 Jews could get asylum in India during the Holocaust, and it was largely because of the Muslim opposition. The British were sensitive to the Muslim opposition. That's why they made it mandatory for those seeking asylum to first produce a proof of guaranteed employment in India before they could be allowed entry into the country. The only position of assistant professor in Hebrew in India at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, remained vacant even after a number of years of its being founded because of its being reserved for the visually challenged. While Islamic studies in Arabic and Persian are available at almost all major Indian universities, and a state university devoted primarily to Arabic and Persian is being established in Lucknow in Uttar Pradesh, despite the dwindling number of applicants for courses in these languages at the University of Lucknow, Jewish studies is absolutely non-existent. I have been a student of Western history, yet I was never taught about the Holocaust, neither in school nor at college. And when I asked the head of the Department of Western History at the University of Lucknow, my alma mater, this is how she responded. Now, efforts have also been initiated for the betterment of Muslim-Jewish relations. A positive sign was when the dictator of Pakistan, General Pervez Musharraf, spoke under the auspices of the American Jewish Congress. There have been efforts in Pakistan. An Indian Muslim delegation went to Israel in August 2007, but they were seen as a people who had betrayed the community. These are pictures from my hometown, Lucknow. That's the most prominent tourist landmark in the city, Imambara. During the American invasion of Iraq, flags of Israel and America were drawn at the entrance so that whosoever entered the building first trampled upon those flags. The picture below is that of the Navras Jaat Aafreedi, the biggest Islamic seminary in Lucknow, funded. I can't be sure about that. Well, Khomeini, his grandfather, lived in India for a number of decades before he returned to Iran, his city home. And he is Maulana Nadwi, director of Navras Jaat Aafreedi, whose quote I showed in a slide. He was the chairman of the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies. What I did to create an awareness of the Holocaust was hold poster exhibitions. I got a set of 20 posters from Yad Vashem, and I exhibited these posters before an audience of 5,000 people on different occasions. Altogether, these posters were seen by 5,000 people. Lectures. I got the most prominent writers, poets, professors, academics to speak against Holocaust denial. It's very hard to get approval in the Indian academic world for any course focused on Jewish studies. But over the years, I have developed strategies how to overcome this obstacle. I can do so very discreetly in a camouflaged manner. This is a course that I designed, and whatever is in red on the slide is not there officially in black and white. But this is what I teach under the themes that are there in white. This is my proposal as to what can be done to create an awareness of the Holocaust and the Jews and thus bring about a positive change in Muslim attitudes towards the Jews in Israel and Zionism. I have done some of these things. For instance, I held an evening of Jewish cantorial music in the memory of Daniel Pearl and invited a prominent Urdu Muslim journalist to speak on the occasion. I tried to invite the Israeli musician Tal Kravitz for a shoot at my university, but I failed to get permission, although Tal Kravitz was not charging anything for it. There was no budget involved in it, yet I was refused permission. So I simply invited him at my residence and had a small get-together. But I held it in memory of Daniel Pearl, and I drafted the story and got it published in the press. So it did have an impact. I did manage to invite the world's only Hebrew Qawwal, Shai Ben-Sur, for a concert at the university, which was attended by around 3,000 people. I screened A Mighty Heart, based on Daniel Pearl's widow, Marianne Pearl's book, before a Muslim audience. These are pictures of the first Holocaust films retrospective in South Asia, which I got the mayor of the city to inaugurate it. These are pictures from the Holocaust films retrospective. Organized readings of Jewish authors from India and also from Israel. I invited foreign students, American Jewish students, to the University of Lucknow for a dialogue with Muslim students and also Hindu students. I got Motilin, an eminent playwright from Israel, to speak at the Gautam Buddha University. Hebrew poet C.P. Levine Byron from Israel. American Jewish filmmakers Kurt Fussell and Alan Friedland to speak and screen their films at the Gautam Buddha University. Prominent American Jewish painter of Indian origin, Sayona Benjamin, to hold an exhibition of her paintings and to give a lecture at the university. The only Jewish author in the Hindi language, India's national language, Sheila Rohekar, I invited her to speak at the university. Dr. Richard Benkin, a prominent Zionist from Chicago. Achi Anzi, he currently teaches Hebrew at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, along with Dr. Khurshid Imam. I invited him to speak. And here's a picture of Dr. Khurshid Imam, the person who has come to hold the only position of assistant professor in the Hebrew language in India, and who recently held an international conference on the Hebrew language and culture in India, the first ever in South Asia. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.